Thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it. My name is Karim Samra. I'm the CEO and founder of Change Labs. So exciting to have you with us today and to have Thndr here with us today. Guys, Ahmad is the co-founder and CEO of Thndr. Thndr is one of the leading companies right now in the MENA region in general. It is active on the Egyptian stock exchange. When you look at the number of new entrants to the stock exchange since Thndr has been founded, it is actually alarming and very impressive. So, and they have an incredible group of investors backing them, including Biko Capital, including Tiger Global. These are, for those of us who know, these are incredible names, right? They're industry leading names in the Middle East and Africa and beyond. These are global VCs, guys. And so, we're here today to find out more from Ahmad on how he created this incredible company, how he managed to raise funding, at all first, and then in second from some of the best VCs in the world, right? Some of these guys, it's their first time in Egypt and their first time in the Middle East and their first time in Africa, and they're looking to Ahmad and Thndr. We want to know his secret, right? And how he did this, because we're all in this, on the same journey effectively here. Ahmad, to give you some background, Change Labs is currently running 4 programs across the Middle East. We're talking about Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, and Palestine. We have invited all of our entrepreneurs from all programs to come and listen to you and hear you, because we felt like your session would be very valuable to everybody. So some of these guys are fintech focused, some of them are not fintech focused, they're general startups, some of them are early stage, idea stage, others are a little bit more advanced. So there's a big group today here with us. There's about 30 to 40 companies we're expecting to join today, and they're still joining, as I'm speaking. So what I'd like to do is first give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and your background as an individual, and sort of what was your life like before Thndr, and how did you reach that stage where you decided to found Thndr, and then we can take it from there.
طيب Karim, thank you so much for inviting me over, and thank you so much for these kind words. I'm honored to be part of this, and I'm a big fan and believer in what you guys are doing, and any chance or any opportunity for me to help out or be part of this, would love to do it and take part of it. And my name is Ahmad Hammouda. My background is finance, so I studied finance, and then I did CFA, which is like a master's in finance. And I did investment banking for almost 8 years, up until mid-2017, decided to join Uber. So I made this career shift from investment banking to Uber. I joined the strategy and planning team with a focus on competition. The mandate to us was very simple. Either Uber becomes the regional player or the regional leader, or we end up selling Uber to Karim. And if you guys recall, the narrative was Uber selling to Karim, Uber and Karim merging, to Uber acquiring Karim on the back of regional leadership. Something that we as a team were very proud, because it is the first time outside of the US where Uber actually acquires the regional player and not the other way around. And the other thing, when you hear about like one of the biggest companies, tech companies in the world, allocating $3 billion to our region, you would start understanding how these tech companies see the potential of our region. And then got promoted to general manager Uber Egypt. We had a quite good year. Our business grew by 60%. Cairo became the #1 city in Europe, Middle East, and Africa in terms of trips. So we're doing 3 million trips in Egypt. And Cairo is bigger than any other city in Europe and Africa, like London, Paris, any other city. And what was more interesting and exciting to us, that before the end of the year, Egypt became contribution neutral, not losing money anymore, which is a big milestone for any market that Uber operates in. Myself and the ex-Uber team members that we have here at Thndr, we always say that like we got to see the growth at all costs era at Uber, and we got to see the building sustainable products and sustainable businesses era at Uber, as Uber was prepping to go public and do its IPO. By the end of 2019 is when I decided to resign and start focusing on building Thndr, before dwelling into Thndr. And I had the idea of Thndr since my days back at investment banking 2016. So I was working on the sale of the investment bank I used to work at, and I got to see firsthand how outdated the business model is, how far these people are from understanding and observing what's happening globally. And for those who are doing fintechs is very simple. Before technology, every other financial institution was building for higher net worth and other institutions. And it made perfect sense. In order to reach individuals, you had to have a lot of branches. You had to have an account manager for each subset of clients. And accordingly, you had to go by default to the bigger wallets. And every other institutions built for the bigger wallets until technology happened. And with the press of a button, you can now reach millions. And then you can build the software for Karim to service himself by himself, no need for an account manager. And accordingly, the economics started making sense. And I think this is the exciting, or all the excitement that we're seeing about fintech. How can use technology to avail financial services to volumes and volumes of served clientele. So this is 2016. Robinhood was gaining a lot of traction. Not sure if you guys heard about it, but like Robinhood is, I think, is pioneered the investment platform for individuals and democratizing investing. And also what Robinhood pioneered is actually introducing UI and UX elements to a financial services platform. So before Robinhood, financial service platform were more of enablers, more of a very dull experience. And this is what Robinhood decided to change. And they are the first app on App Store to take, like in the financial service, to take the Apple Design Award. And this was my inspiration back then. And back then I had this very simple question. Do I know anything about technology? And the obvious answer was no. And this is when I decided, let's do 1 year at Uber, understand how this world is functioning, prep myself, and then do Thndr. And then I got the general manager operation. I thought it would be a good opportunity for me to enhance my story, to build relationship with regulatory entities. And this is why it got extended by another year and a half. I wanted to be brief, but then I don't know why I spoke a lot. Apologies, Karim.
No, that's great, Ahmad. There's a lot of great stuff in there. So, I mean, if you break it down a little bit, first of all, I think one important thing we need to all understand is that Ahmad had this idea well before he launched it. So he was thinking about it for years, and it sounds like he even started planning for it, taking steps to fill in gaps. So, okay, I want to start a tech company. I want to start a fintech company. I have zero experience in technology. Let me go get experience at Uber. That took a year, 2 years of his life. And yes, in and of itself, it was a very valuable experience, I'm sure. But when you think about it in retrospect, he was setting himself up for his next big move, right? And so, sorry, yeah. Is that right, Ahmad?
No, I thank you so much for it. Thank you so much, Yani. So I always say this. So Yani, you're spot on. I had the idea 2016. We founded the company December 2019. And I always say that, and I think to the group of entrepreneurs joining us today, I think what you guys want to do is, like, the chances are most of the people that you will talk to will not be seeing or understanding what you guys are trying to do. Like, you are trying to change how people live, how people do business, how people function. Like every other startup using technology is trying to do so. And accordingly, you would not expect people to agree or align to what you're doing. But what you really need is actually having this honesty with yourself and self-assessment, and actually keep asking the questions. Are we ready to do that? Is this the right product? Because in order to persevere, and the difference between perseverance and actually being stubborn is actually what you, Karim, was saying, is actually questioning whether I'm ready or not, and actually putting aside this idea that if I don't do it tomorrow, someone else will do it. If you are to do it, you need to make sure that you're actually ready to venture into doing this. But thank you, Karim, for noting this.
Yeah, that's really important, I think, because a lot of us jump right in and we don't think about this idea. Are we ready? We don't even plan in advance sometimes. How did you come, Ahmad, to that final decision? I mean, you're at Uber, you're successful, you're doing well, Uber is doing well. I mean, when was there a day or a minute or a moment where you were like, okay, that's it? Tomorrow is it a day where I'm going and launching Thndr? Did it happen kind of gradually? What about your co-founders? If you had any at the time, how did you find them? Like, I'm curious to hear about this phase of jumping off the boat, so to speak.
Yeah. So I will tell you, like, there are things that would actually justify or back what you're doing, and whether we like it or not, there is always this intuition piece, right? And to be honest, like 2016, so when I had the idea, the first thing that I did is I actually went to the CEO of this investment bank. And I was like, you know what? I have a great idea. Let's add another arm to this investment bank that does digital investing. He loved the idea. He called the head of brokerage, and then he came and the guy was like, this is pure bullshit. What are you talking about? A brokerage company without brokers? We cannot do this. And this is when I knew I want to do this, because the more you start talking to people in the industry, the more you understand why there is a gap. And I think the first intuition move is one, I'm excited about technology. That is, again, like I'm 34 years old, so I am this generation that when we graduated, there was one way of doing business, and then midway, the marketplace completely shifted, right? And I think it was obvious for me as well back in 2016 that I want to be part of this new marketplace. Like I like this new technology world, and the first step for me is actually let's make this move. Like, and it was like you'd imagine like me telling my dad and my mom, like, after all of these years of like university tuition, that I'm leaving investment banking, I'm not going to use my CFA anymore, and I'm doing this shift and joining Uber. So this was an intuition move, is let me try this out. Let me try to understand how this world is functioning. I joined Uber June 2017, and again, and one thing that I always tell my friends, and I tell myself, with the too many options that every one of us has right now, it's very important that we have clear agenda for what we want to get out of the next 2 years. And for me, it was very simple. I need to understand how this world is functioning, and I need to start asking the right questions with regards to Thndr. 6 months down the line, there's a big event in Egypt that's called Rise Up, and then Uber did one of the activation, which was ride and pitch. So we got Tesla, and then we got VC investors, and we asked people at Rise Up to actually sign up and go pitch their ideas. And actually 6 months after joining Uber, I actually signed up, and I started talking to, like, I pitched the Thndr to an investor. I know him quite well right now. We met 1 year ago, and I was like, you know what, like 4 years ago, someone came and told me this, and I told him this will never work out. But I started talking to investors, and this is something that I very much keep pushing for. When you start talking to investors, you start exposing yourself to the real world and to the right questions. I started talking to.
You had a pitch deck? Well, you were just pitching from your mind? Well, you had a pitch deck. How were you reaching out to investors?
My first pitch deck was back in 2016, which I did it. And this, to be honest, so I always had this pitch deck for myself, but like from 2016 to I would say mid 2019, it was more of conversation, engaging investors. I started having like the formal investor pitch after resigning from Uber. Like I always thought this: if I'm pitching to you, Karim, if I don't have the guts to make this move and actually show you that I resigned, then why would I ask you to believe in this idea and in this venture? The thing that I wanted to say is I started questioning myself, and I think this is why I said I want to do Uber. I started talking to everyone at the industry, and I think there is this common perception is, let's hide our idea, let's not talk to people. I actually talked to every head of brokerage at Egypt, asking him, I'm telling him about my idea of this digital investment platform that is good.
You did the opposite of hiding your idea.
Exactly. I actually went to these guys because I had to understand why aren't they doing it. And when you actually talk to these people and you see their answers, and like, look, my shitty app, like people can buy and sell assets. Like, what are you? And so you understand that there is a misconnection here. And then mid 2018, while I was at Uber, I actually hired 2 entry-level developers. Like one of them is, I call him our golden employee, is employee number 1. He's a front-end developer, and actually we started working on a prototype for Thndr, and we started talking about people. And my plan was actually to resign by mid 2018, so I have 1 year of experience. What happened mid 2018 is I got this promotion that I will be the GM of Uber Egypt, which is a great opportunity for anyone. I thought, and again, this is me going back to that you need to have a clear agenda, because it's very easy to get distracted. Even with this very prestigious job, my number one question is, would this enhance my chances to do Thndr? Yes or no? If yes, let's make sure that this is what I'm solving for during my tenure at Uber, and let's make sure that by the end of 2019, I'm actually doing Thndr, and I'm not lured by like this prestigious, comfy job. And like,
so you took,
like I can tell you, like,
you took your own money, Ahmad, right? You took your own money, Ahmad, to hire these two first people. That was your own money, correct?
Yeah. What I did is, from my money and from my savings, is when I actually left Uber and joined Thndr, my salary was around 30% of what I was getting paid at Uber. And this was, for me, 30%. What I can contribute to the business. 30% of my salary at Uber.
So not only did you invest your own money that you had saved over some amount of time, obviously, to create a prototype, or at least something that you can show to investors to say, like, look, we've built something, we have something. Plus, when you build, of course, it forces you to ask important questions about, like, who do I need to connect with? How do I connect? What about regulators? What about clients, customers, payments, etc.? You start having to think about these things when you start building, even more than before. But you also took a 70% salary cut. For how long, Ahmad, did you have to take that 70% salary cut?
The dates are from December 2019, when we founded the company, until March 2022. What I'm trying to say, and I think this is always a question that I get asked, is how would you actually convince people to invest with you very early on? And it depends on the different round you are, but like the first round is about three things. Are you solving a real problem? If you solve it, is the market a big one? And if like the price would be a big one, and you, the team, and you and the team. All of these were me showing to you, Karim, to investors, that I am the right one to make a bet on. I am willing to resign from a very prestigious job to pursue this dream. There is nothing that will stop me from actually making this happen. But I'm not like, I just want I want this to be clear. Like, I'm not saying that you have to have this salary cut. Like, what you need to always think about is, how are you going to show investors that you are the right ones for those investors to make a bet on you.
Absolutely. And these three things that Ahmad just mentioned, I hope you guys have heard these before, right? Which is the problem. What's the problem that you're solving? What is it an interesting and exciting market in dollar terms? Is there a lot of money to be made? Remember, we're talking to investors. And then finally, who is the team behind this product? Are they committed? Are they passionate? Do they have grit? And do they have skin in the game? Which is what Ahmad is talking about. He had skin in the game. He had sacrificed his career. Potentially, he had sacrificed a compensation, potentially, right? And he was putting it all into this new thing at the time, Thndr. So, Ahmad, okay, so you've done this, you do this, then what happens? Like, what happens as you start launching? When is the first traction that you start seeing?
Yeah. One very important thing, like, I thought, is when I resigned from Uber and go talk to investors, like the money will be coming from everywhere, and it was not the case. And again, one thing that I always say is, if you want to do a startup, you have to have thick skin, right? And I always do this, and I take a lot of pride about this. So my first meeting with an investor, I actually borderline got kicked out of office, and it was actually Beku, and I always searched them for this, and now they invested with me in the third round. And our first actually yes was after 45 no's, 45-minute meetings with investors, and all of them telling us no.
45. I just want to make sure, Ahmed, I'm so sorry. I just want to make sure everybody hears this. 45 no's before the first yes. That's incredible. Sorry, back to you.
And we talked to 100. The total number of investors were like 102 investors.
So how did you get to that yes, Ahmed? What? So obviously persistence, right? I mean, staying at it over the course of those meetings. Were you also improving your offering, your product, your deck that you were going to? Were you learning from the no's until you got to the yes?
So a couple of things. One, you spot on. I think I always say this, it's a very balanced or a very thin line between perseverance and being stubborn, right? And for us, these 45 no's were great opportunities for us to actually poke of ideas, to poke some of the holes that we have in our pitch. And like every other no, we get out of it. We know the questions, we know where we are. It's a good opportunity for us to take a step back. About like, I'll give you an example because it's something like, so Beku kicked me out of the room, and actually it made sense for them. When I went to them, I was like, I'm going to partner with an existing brokerage house, piggyback on their license, build a digital investment offering, and we share the revenues. And they were like, who would own the contractual relationship with your clients? And I was like, if they have the license, they own. And they were like, you know nothing about how this new tech acquisition world is. And actually, I went out of it, and it made a lot of sense, and actually changed my strategy from I want to partner with an existing brokerage house. I'm actually going to the regulator. I'm going to ask a license. And I don't know if you know this or not, but like August 2020, 8 months after we started the company, Thndr got its brokerage license, which was the first license to be issued in Egypt since 2008. But 45 no's, 45 opportunities to think and rethink about your ideas. The other thing is you keep knocking doors. I think we talked about this before, but like it's very important that you do your research, you understand who are the investors who are actually excited to invest at this stage. So don't go for companies that invest in Series B and above when you are at the pre-seed. You go for the VCs that actually interested into pre-seed. You go into those VCs that are interested in industry in this region. You start compiling your list. Like we had a list of 102, and then you keep knocking doors. And I always say this: if it's a maybe, it's a no. Until get your yes. If it's a maybe, you move to the next one. You keep knocking doors, until finally you will find someone. Because again, to your point, if you are solving a problem that you believe in, the likelihood of you finding someone who understands and believe in the impact that you will have and this company will have for solving the problem is actually high. You just keep knocking doors.
Yeah, and I think it's very important, very, very important to understand that, persistence, the difference between, like you said, Ahmad, I mean, persistence, but smart persistence, guys. So learning from the no's, updating, upgrading, changing, pivoting over the course of those 45 no's, so to speak, until you get to that yes. It's not you just sitting back doing the same thing 45 times and hoping to get a different outcome, right? That's not how it's going to work. So I think this is a very valuable learning experience from Ahmad there. Okay, so you got your yes. Who was the yes? How much was it for? Were you prepared for the term sheet and the negotiations and the valuation conversation, or what was it like?
So the round. So we did our first round back in 2019 and November, December 2019, and like back then, norms for the pre-seed round was like $5 million cap and a 20% discount. And what we actually went down to $4 million as part of the negotiations. The first yes was for the XFS, which is a US-based VC that is mandated to invest in Africa, and Thndr, which is an Egypt VC that invested in Kareem and the most exciting VCs in Egypt. So that's very simple. Like I'm not sure if you want me to do this. Like I sent an email to Y Combinator. I want them, if it's possible, to actually submit an application to Y Combinator at the ideation phase. I sent this email to Michael Seibel, the managing director, and then he replied. I don't know how he replied, given the number of emails that he gets on a daily basis. Yes, we actually like companies at the ideation phase. So I did my application. I did, like, back then I was still founder. I did my application. I did my like this, the 1 minute pitch, send it to them. Like it was late. And then I got an email that come to San Francisco for a 10 minutes interview to tell you whether you're in or out. And as you would know, Y Combinator is a great stamp to have in our region. And back in 2019, even less startups from our region were applying them. And then I started building my whole fundraising strategy on, you need to sign before my Y Combinator interview on the 4th of December. And it was I'm really glad that me and my family actually survived this period. But like I got the signature on the 4th of December, like a couple of hours before the interview with Y Combinator. And then I had the interview with Y Combinator, and they said yes. And to be honest, once you have Y Combinator, it's very easy to get the other investors.
So that was a very smart move, obviously, Ahmad, and unexpected, right? Because at the time, if you had asked anybody, experts, hey, who should I go to? Nobody would have said go to Y Combinator at the time, right? As an Egyptian company, idea stage, people would have been like, yeah, that's the last thing they would have said. Again, this is a testament to the creativity, right? And grit or passion of the entrepreneur who isn't willing to take no for an answer, but also kind of knows what might work and might not work and is willing to give it a shot. And I think Y Combinator, if you're going to give something a shot, that's the shot you take, right? I mean, it's that kind of legendary place. We all need to know about these Y Combinators of the world. As an entrepreneur, as a founder, you need to know who's out there doing what, right? Globally, not just in your region. You need to be willing to go outside of your comfort zone, and you really need to be willing to take risks early on and kind of do whatever it takes. So, all right, that's obviously a great way to get started, Ahmad. So at that point, though, did you have an MVP? Did you have customers? Did you have revenue? Any kind of traction at that point?
No. Yeah. So as you would know, like again, as you would know, like because it's a fintech, so you actually have to have a license first before launching, right? So we had a prototype of the product, and I like by the time I think I had like eight joiners. Like these are like founding team members, and like right after Y Combinator, I had my co-founder joining. So he has been with me helping out since day one. And after Y Combinator is when he's resigning as well. He's resigning from Uber and joining. And then I think this is the exciting part about startups is it's like an ongoing marathon, right? Like you finish a race, and like, there is no time to celebrate and just race around, because to your point, when we have the money, we don't have a license, and we need to start going to the investors to sort of and convince them that Thndr is, and this plan and this team and this vision deserve a new brokerage license. And this was the beginning of 2020 with COVID hitting in, and actually a lot of shutdowns and so on and so forth. I'm glad that the beginning of it, but also like everyone who's doing a startup need to know that you do your best, and then luck, or like you would wait for being fortunate and being lucky. And actually, when I look back at 2020, our proposition to the regulator, like digital investing, financial inclusion, digitizing an existing industry, went in line with COVID and how this happened. And this is not a good conversation to have anymore. It's a must-have conversation. It actually worked well in our favor, and we got the license in August. We got the license. We never did brokerage before, and then now we need to figure out how can we do brokerage. And then October is when we launched our first equity, or like equity trading on our platform. And I remember clearly like dealing with the infrastructure and learning. Like it took us, I think, 8 hours to register one new investor. And I remember like having this conversation with my partner, like, if we continue to do that, I think there is no future for such a company. Like everyone knew like this cannot scale. And then you start working with the different government entities on enhancing the infrastructure. And it's one challenge after another challenge until end of last year, when we thought we're now in a position where we can stop fighting, look back at what we built, and start talking to investors for our next chapter, which is the round that we did that was led by Tiger Global, Beko, and Process.
Yes.
And I'm more than happy to talk about this more if you want.
So Ahmad, let me take a step back though, because every time you say something, there's interesting stuff I want to deep dive on before I move forward. So on the tech side, did you hire an attorney? So you're here, you went through your first round. I assume you did some UI, UX, some screenshots of what the app will look like, right, at this point? Yeah. So people have an idea.
So my advice, and I think I had these conversations with some of the companies that I talked to during this cycle. Tech comes at the core of what we're doing. And I think if the like couple of things that I learned from Uber, and like I think the most important thing, if tech is at the core of what you're doing, it has to be in-house and it has to be prioritized. It is what would determine. Like again, if we want to democratize investing, we have to remove manual touch points, and it has to be tech driven. And if it has to be tech driven, there has to be tech and product people to do it. So all of my first hires, or like I would say 90% of my first hires were actually in the technology scope, and we always have like I will tell you, like, so January is when I went to meet with the vice chairman of the FRA, the Financial Regulatory Authority, and like I knew that he had an issue with Uber, and like they used to refer to me as the Uber guy at the FRA. So I was going there. I'm not doing Uber anymore, but like I know people there. Like tell me what's wrong, like what do you want to fix, and I will actually try to coordinate and make this happen for you. And then like after this, I wanted to tell him about what we're trying to build with Thndr. Like every time I talk, Kareem, someone come into the office, and then I'm missing my train of thought, and I'm not actually trained to do that. I'm yet learning how to pitch my idea to the regulator. And then at some point in time, like I was like, you know what? This is the app that we're trying to build. And I showed him the app. And he was like, I want every other brokerage company in Egypt to have this app. And I was like, no, it doesn't work like this. And yeah, then we don't have a business. And he was like, I want you to come meet with the chairman of the FRA and show him what you want to do. And like it started from this, like us pitching. Like I always say this, like Egypt, and I would assume like the different, like Egypt, Lebanon, Jordan, these are not the kind of pull regulators. Like they will not come knock on our doors and ask us how can we help. These are more of the regulators. If you go knock the doors, show them how serious you are about what you're building, the amount of red tape that they can cut for you and support you is actually unbelievable. Yani if who would believe that the Egyptian Financial Regulatory Authority decided to give a group of young people the first brokerage license in the last 12 years in August 2020. But this is what we have been doing. Like we've always been building a product. We were not waiting to get the license to start building. We're doing everything, which is very stressful, to be honest. Like it is like how motivating trying to drive the team to keep building without any visibility on when are we getting the license. But like every time there was a chance for us to showcase what we have been doing, it was there.
This is critical, guys. Right? The prototype, the unconnected, MVP, right? And maybe it's just for you and your friends and family, and it's not actually working, but it shows you screenshots. It shows you, it lets you experience the platform, how it will work, what it will do. This is so important. And for Ahmad, it was critical. So you did not hire any lawyers, Ahmad, at that point. You did it yourself, the regulation.
So lawyers actually have an interesting story. So I actually went for a big legal firm first, and then you know how like most of the legal firms would tell you like we want to do startups and we want to do this and add this, and then I realized I'm not getting the service I want. And then there was a very like a young I actually made friends with a very young lawyer. His name is Ahmad. He's now actually doing a startup, and I'm very proud of him. And so he's not a legal firm, and actually we did it together. So he studied. So I didn't have a lawyer, but like I had a legal advisor who studied law. And I think one thing that I want to say that's very important for the regulator to be excited about you guys. They need to see the founders. Yeah. So one thing that we miss at founders is when we think that we should only be pitching to investors, when in reality you should be pitching to you, the regulator. If you're regulated, you should be pitching to the next hire, to clients. Like pitching and like selling your vision, your dream is very important that you do it to everyone and not only to investors. I think it's very important, and this is why it was very important for the regulator to see me doing this and not a lawyer doing this on my behalf. Otherwise, it would have been a transactional relationship between a company and the regulator rather than building a relationship where the regulator wants to bet on this startup.
Okay, that sounds amazing. Tell me a little bit about, when you did go to meet with the regulator, okay? Because again, we have companies here at very different stages, many of them fintech startups in the region. How much research, how much preparation, do you have to have made before you meet the regulator? Because some of us are going to the regulator thinking, well, I'm going to the regulator for him to give me answers. So I'm just going to sit,
Yeah.
ask a lot of questions, learn, and that's it. Or is your experience that you have to go with a very strong concept, having figured out, 'cause like you said, you, for instance, were originally thinking you're going to get use a broker's license, existing broker's license. Then you said, no, I need my own license based on investor meetings. I mean, how much of that is okay with the regulator too? Or do you have to have a
Yeah.
much more concise, clear idea of what you're doing?
Yeah. So two things that you mentioned, right? One, I think one thing that I would avoid is actually going to the regulator for answers, because then you will be the least of like the priority list for the regulator. And the other thing is um, uh, having a transaction, like going and applying for the license and just going back. Like, these are the list of requirements that you guys asked. Here is my file. Please review and get back to me. It's actually, the way I look at it, it's exactly the same process that you would have with investors, but the messaging, you would tweak the messaging for the regulator, right? So when we went and spoke to the regulator, we had a pitch for the regulator whereby we were showing how Thndr is exactly in line with the objectives of the regulator. And for us, for example, to give you some context here, it were two things. One, financial inclusion, and our definition of financial inclusion of not only having a card but having access to financial services and being able to save and invest, grow your wealth, is actually a financial service which would fall under financial inclusion. So what we're trying to build at the end of the day is in line with what you guys want. This is one. Two is the innovation piece, and actually what we have built and showed the regulator from day one, even before the regulatory framework was out. How have we built our tools for digital onboarding? So like, we know that is not yet legally allowed in Egypt to digitally onboard clients without the signature, but we know that this is something that you're working on, and we're here to build the infrastructure from it, from a business point of view, so that we're ready for that. I think these were the two things that excited the regulator about us. So again, the idea has always been, I remember when I went to the chairman, he was like, you have 5 minutes, tell me what you need. But I had this presentation ready. I presented, I started talking and I started speaking, and I was a bit fast. And then he was like, actually we spent an hour and a half, and he was like, what do you want from me? And the good thing about what we did is, before having this meeting, I think this is what you've been saying, Karim. Even before having this, other than us building the product, we have applied all our documents to the different departments. Like, we did the application to the different departments. But like, when I went to the regulator, everything was in place. What do you need from me? It will actually align with what we're trying to do. A lot of red tapes that we need to cut. And I will give you an example. In order to be a brokerage company in Egypt, 25% has to be owned by a bank, by a financial institution. And like, when you're doing a startup, I don't want to have 25% owned by a financial institution. I'm building all of this on the flexibility and our ability to run fast, right? He actually helped us establish a holding co, which would be eligible as a financial institution. And then this holding co established the brokerage company and gave her the first license in the last 12 years. And again, it's the same. It's this mindset of us getting like convincing and getting the regulator on board. Like, we treated the regulator as if he is Y Combinator or another investor, but like, what we made sure is actually we changed our messaging to align with their objectives.
So this holding company, Ahmad, the shareholders were Egyptian commercial banks, or one Egyptian commercial bank?
No. The regulations say that you have to have a bank. We actually did it without having the bank, and he helped us do that. He gave us this exception to do it. And I will tell you, like, and I'm sure like it's the same for the other entities. If they are convinced with what you're trying to do, and if they see eye to eye with what you're building and how this will tie into their objectives, the amount of red tape that they can cut for you is unbelievable.
And Ahmed, relative to, so when was this relative to, so how much funding had you raised at that point when you were having the regulator conversation?
We had $800,000.
$800,000 as a seed round from angels or what?
No. So my first round was the first round that I was talking. So we did 3 rounds since we started. A pre-seed round, December 2019, $800,000. A seed round of $1.2 million 1 year after. And then last Feb, which is like a year and a half after, we did the $20 million round. So when I had these conversations with the regulator, we only had $800,000. And it was like Y Combinator, 40X, Rabacap, MSA Capital. I'm not sure if this is right or wrong, but like I always wanted to go for VCs, and actually I think this is where you get really exposed to the tough questions. And if I cannot handle their questions, I'm not very comfortable with me running the business. I'm not sure if you get what I'm trying to say here, but I think I confused you, Basim.
So I hear you. And so the valuations at that point, Ahmad, you said when you started with Y Combinator, I think you gave up 20%. Is that right for that first round?
So when I did Y Combinator, Y Combinator come at a one deal, which is $150,000 for 7%, and then the others, it was like 16% at $4 million valuation.
$4 million valuation. Got it. So your valuation.
Every other one, Y Combinator, I think comes at $2 million valuation, and the others came at $4 million valuation. This was round 1. Round 2, it was at $13 million valuation, and round 3 was $25 million valuation.
Let's talk about that first round. I mean, I know that Y Combinator has a formula, right? It's like 7% for 150, and that's it. So the implied valuation there is about $2 million, like you said. Were there any other measures you used at that point to, I mean, how did you come up with the 4? How did you justify the 2 while you feel like at the time it wasn't that important?
Yeah, so I'll tell you how I see it, and I might be wrong. And from my experience, the first pre-seed round, I would say 80% or 85% is the potential of what this team can bring or build within this interesting and exciting problem or big problem and interesting market, as you mentioned, right? So it was, the whole valuation was based on X Uber GM. This is the they have right now. This is my vision, so on and so forth. And then the $4 to $5 million valuation, they were like the normal standard. It's anywhere between 3 and 5 is a pre-seed round, right? It's not based on anything. And then I think over the last 2 years, this started increasing a bit, and I think it's going back to these levels right now. And then the second round.
Yeah, but wait, sorry to interrupt you. One thing though, for the startups in this program who are raising money, right? And obviously they have their projected financials. Let's say they have maybe they have, an MVP. What you're saying is that it's effectively just a negotiation with the investor, right? I mean, there is no.
Look, it's not a negotiation, but like there's one thing that there is a way that I want to look at it, and this is based on my current experience, right? I think the difference between a startup and an SME or a normal company, that we're trying to solve for the 1 + 1 = 50, right? This is what we're trying to solve and figure out. How can we build this technology-driven product where we can scale with minimal or very less resources, right? And accordingly, it is extremely important at the pre-seed, at the seed, at the Series A, that you never deviate from selling and raising money on the vision that you're capturing. Like 0.5% of Egyptians are investing. 50% of the households in the US are investing. This is the massive room and the massive market that I'm solving for. The first round for me, I was solving for 3 things: figuring out a regulatory stance, the team, building the platform. These are the three things that I'm going to focus on during my first round. And this is why by October 2020, I had the license, I launched the platform, and I had the team. I'm ready for my next round with the other milestones. Validate my product in Egypt. This is a product that people need. Evolve from an equity trading platform to an investment platform. So add mutual funds, add US equities, add other products. And three, a strategy where this can become a regional play rather than an Egypt-only play. By the end of 2021, our growth rates were really were very interesting. Like, there was validations that people want this product. Like 87% of our investors are first-time investors. We accounted for 6% of the new entrants in the Egyptian stock market. 50% came from cities outside of Cairo. Like, everything was saying that what we're doing is what people want. We added mutual funds, added other products, and then the third milestone was actually now, as a product, as infrastructure, we're ready to embark to our next chapter, which is actually becoming the regional investment platform of choice. And this is when we started raising the funds. And by the third one is when we start looking at, like, these are our projections, these are our numbers, this is what we're doing. At the pre-seed level, it's us. We're us focusing more on what I'm trying to say is it's very important that you're not solving for the short term. And if we are building for the 1 + 1 = 50, there are things that you need to build and spend time on that will get the right ROI in 2 or 3 or 4 years, as opposed to generating revenues right now.
So in the absence of revenues, in the absence, Ahmad, of revenues and profitability, right? Certainly profitability takes even longer for many of us. Revenues might come sooner, but still might take a while. What are you recommending that startups use? I mean, what kind of traction did you, like, how did you show that there was a willingness to pay? How did you show that customers would sign up for your platform before you had your license, before you had, revenue?
Our pre-seed round, I only had a product and a plan, to be honest, and I couldn't have revenue. No one. And I think because fintech is fintech, that you cannot launch the product without a license, but there was an understanding that this was the case. Every other round, I actually showed the growth in the number of users, and I showed the unit economics. And again, it's very important that this growth is actually a growth rate of a product that would sell, right? And again, there is this saying, if you're selling $1 for 80 cents, you can grow like no one else, right? You need to make sure that you're selling the right products. And I always showed this unit economics, like currently, how much Thndr is making on an annual level from our users, how much are we paying to acquire those users, how much will it get us with it to actually pay back those CAC. And we had this target is that we want this CAC to go below 6 months. And this is the milestone that I'm solving for right now with my clients. So I always had targets that would talk to or would relate to how this can become sustainable, and actually the clear to how this can. I'm just saying is there is this always the confusion between I'm solving for the next 6 months, when I know as a company right now I should be focusing on the product. I should be focusing on getting a license, because there is always this. I need to add, like, who wouldn't say that adding crypto to an investment platform will actually boost its numbers? But if I don't do it with the regulators, I'm sure I'm solving for the short-term growth rates on the long-term relationship with the regulator. What I'm trying to say is actually having your ultimate vision clearly in front of your eyes and actually solving for this. Because we're building, like, there is this mistake of we're building technology-driven platforms. We're not building traditional businesses that are complemented or branded as technology companies. And if you want to build this, the first 2 years should be focusing on building the product, and building the would take time. Building the right MP would take time. Iterating would take time. So I would always, if you're a SaaS, for example, like focusing on 3 clients, making sure that you sold for you have the right product is much more valuable to me, and I might be wrong, than having 70 companies during year one, where most of the operations are actually being done manually, Excel sheets, and a lot of manual touch points. This is what I'm trying to say here.
Okay. And I want to thank Ahmad once again. I really want to thank him for his time today. It's been incredibly valuable for all of these. We've had about 40 companies here today, and I think it's so valuable for them all to hear from you, someone who's done it, right? It's so valuable to have role models to look up to that are from here, from the region, and that have done it here on the ground. And so I want to thank you again for that.
Thank you. Yalla, have a good day, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Ahmad. Thank you.
Bye.